Have you ever wondered why you keep seeing in a woman only what you want to see? Why you insist on projecting onto her what your soul desires, rather than seeing who she truly is? Have you ever felt that overwhelming confusion when a woman's behavior suddenly shifts, leaving you questioning everything you thought you knew about her? You're sitting there right now, and if you're honest with yourself, you can probably recall at least one moment when a woman's actions left you completely bewildered. Maybe she was loving one day and distant the next. Maybe she said she wanted one thing, but did the complete opposite. Maybe you found yourself apologizing repeatedly, without even knowing what you'd done wrong. And through it all, you felt like you were losing your mind, like you were living in two different realities, yours and hers. Today, you're about to discover a brutal truth that Carl Jung understood decades ago, a truth that most men will never grasp because it requires confronting the deepest, most uncomfortable parts of their own psyche. You see, Jung realized that most men don't actually see women at all. What they see is their own soul projected onto her. And it's precisely this archetypal blindness that makes you vulnerable to female emotional manipulation. Not because women are consciously malicious, but because of the unconscious dynamics that govern both masculine and feminine psychology. The pain you feel when you can't understand her sudden coldness, when her affection turns to distance without warning, when you find yourself constantly trying to fix something you can't even name, that pain isn't just confusion. It's the agony of your own unconscious, screaming for recognition. It's your psyche trying to tell you that you're not seeing reality, that you're caught in a web of projections and illusions that distort every interaction you have with the feminine. And until you understand what Jung discovered about the hidden machinery of the psyche, you'll remain trapped in this cycle, blind to the very forces that control your emotional life. You'll continue to suffer the same patterns, the same confusions, the same heartbreaks, wondering why you keep attracting the same type of woman or why your relationships follow the same destructive script. Deep within your masculine psyche lives what Jung called the anima, the archetype of your inner feminine. You probably don't even know she's there, pulling the strings of your desires, shaping your fantasies, coloring every interaction you have with women. This isn't some abstract theory. This is the living reality of your psychological life, operating beneath your conscious awareness every single day. The anima isn't just an idea. She's a living presence within you. She's been forming since you were a child, shaped by your first experiences of the feminine, your mother, your sisters, your early encounters with girls and women. Every feminine influence in your life has contributed to this internal image, this psychological template that now governs how you see every woman you meet. When you meet a woman and feel that instant attraction, that magnetic pull, that sense that she's different from all the others, you're not actually seeing her. You're seeing your own anima projected onto her face. You fall in love not with a woman, but with your own unconscious feminine image. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because you can't see her for who she really is. You can't see what she's actually doing. Think about it. Remember the last time you met someone and felt that immediate connection. That sense that she understood you like no one else. That feeling that you'd finally found the one. In that moment, you weren't experiencing her. You were experiencing the activation of your own anima projection. She became a screen onto which you projected all your unconscious longings, desires and needs for feminine completion. The woman before you embodies her own psychic universe, governed by powerful archetypes. The great mother who nurtures and devours, the maiden who enchants and eludes, the queen who rules and judges, the feminine shadow who manipulates and controls, and the wise old woman who knows secrets you'll never understand. Within her also lives the animus, her inner masculine principle, which often manifests as harsh criticism, rigid opinions, inflexibility, or veiled emotional domination. Each of these archetypes can possess a woman at different times, transforming her behavior in ways that seem incomprehensible to the masculine mind. The nurturing mother who made you feel safe and loved can suddenly become the devouring mother who suffocates and controls. The innocent maiden who awakened your protective instincts can transform into the elusive trickster who plays with your emotions. The queen who made you feel like a king can become the judge who finds you perpetually wanting. You experience these archetypal forces every day without recognizing them. When she suddenly becomes cold after being warm, when she tests your emotional boundaries, when she withdraws affection to see if you'll chase her, these aren't calculated moves by an individual woman. These are expressions of archetypal patterns as old as humanity itself. Let me give you a concrete example. You're in a relationship and everything seems perfect. She's affectionate, supportive, loving. Then one day, without warning, she becomes distant. She doesn't respond to your texts as quickly. Her kisses lack warmth. Her eyes don't light up when she sees you. Your immediate reaction: panic. You start wondering what you did wrong. You replay every conversation, every interaction, searching for your mistake. You increase your efforts. More attention, more gifts, more declarations of love. But the more you chase, the more distant she becomes. What you don't realize is that you're not dealing with her personal mood or individual choice. You're witnessing an archetypal drama, the eternal dance between the masculine and feminine principles. Her withdrawal might be the feminine shadow testing your strength, seeing if you'll maintain your center or collapse into neediness. It might be her animus asserting itself, creating distance to establish psychological independence. Or it might be the great mother archetype shifting from its nurturing to its devouring aspect. But because you're seeing through the lens of your anima projection, you can't perceive these dynamics. All you see is your idealized image of her being threatened. And you react not from strength and clarity, but from the desperate need to restore the projection. Think about your last relationship. Remember those moments when she seemed to change into someone completely different. When her mood shifted without any reason you could understand. When she said one thing but her actions said something entirely different. You probably blamed yourself, or you blamed her, but you never saw the real dynamic at play. The unconscious feminine tests the masculine not out of cruelty, but out of an ancient psychological necessity. She needs to know if you can hold your ground, if you can maintain your center when she embodies chaos. But because you're projecting your anima onto her, you can't see the test for what it is. You see only your own fantasy being threatened, and you react from weakness, from fear, from the desperate need to restore the projection. This testing isn't conscious. When a woman creates drama, picks fights over seemingly nothing, or suddenly questions your commitment, she's usually not aware of the deeper motivations. She's being moved by forces within her psyche that seek to establish the psychological truth of the relationship. Can you remain steady when she's unstable? Can you hold space for her chaos without being consumed by it? Can you see through the surface drama to the deeper need? But here's the tragedy. Most men fail these tests not because they're weak, but because they're blind. They can't see the test because they're too busy trying to manage their own projections. They're trying to preserve their anima fantasy instead of dealing with the real woman before them. This is why you find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do. This is why you feel guilty without knowing why. This is why you try to fix problems that don't actually exist, while remaining blind to the real dynamics unfolding before you. You're not interacting with her. You're shadowboxing with your own unconscious. The manipulation Jung spoke of isn't the conscious, calculated manipulation of a predator. It's the unconscious dance between two psyches, each possessed by forces they don't understand. She doesn't realize she's manipulating. You don't realize you're being manipulated. Both of you are puppets of the collective unconscious, playing out dramas written before you were born. Consider how this plays out in everyday situations. She mentions another man, a co-worker, an old friend, an ex who texted her. Your immediate reaction is jealousy, insecurity, the need to establish your territory. But what if this isn't about the other man at all? What if this is her animus speaking, using masculine competition to test your confidence? What if this is the feminine shadow probing for weakness, seeing if you'll crumble or stand firm? You can't see these dynamics because your anima is triggered. The mention of another man threatens your projection, your fantasy that she exists solely to complete you, to be your perfect feminine counterpart. So you react from insecurity, either by becoming possessive or by pretending you don't care, both of which fail the unconscious test being administered. But the blindness goes even deeper. Your anima doesn't just affect how you see women, it affects how you see yourself in relation to women. When you're in her presence, you don't show up as your authentic self. You show up as who you think she wants you to be, based on what your anima tells you the feminine desires. You've done this countless times. You've pretended to be more successful than you are, more confident than you feel, more emotionally available than your nature allows. You've hidden your true thoughts, suppressed your actual feelings, performed a role you thought would win her approval. And in doing so, you've made yourself even more vulnerable to manipulation because you've abandoned your own ground of being. The woman across from you, possessed by her own unconscious forces, senses this inauthenticity immediately. The feminine has an uncanny ability to detect when a man isn't being real, when he's performing rather than being. And this triggers her own unconscious responses. Tests become harsher. Manipulation becomes more intense, because her psyche is trying to break through to the real man hidden beneath the performance. This creates a vicious cycle. The more you project and perform, the more she tests and manipulates. The more she tests and manipulates, the more you project and perform. Both of you become increasingly possessed by unconscious forces, moving further and further from any possibility of genuine connection. The masculine blindness reaches its devastating peak when you encounter the feminine shadow. This is the moment when everything you thought you knew crumbles, when the woman you idealized reveals aspects that shatter your projections. But here's what destroys most men. You confuse this shadow expression with her personal character, never recognizing it as an archetypal force. The feminine shadow emerges as sudden coldness that freezes your soul, as effective withdrawal that leaves you gasping for emotional air, as calculated seduction that plays with your desires, as emotional control that makes you question your own sanity, as intermittent contempt that cuts deeper than any blade, or as disguised dependence that chains you while making you believe you're free. Let me paint you a picture you've probably lived. You're in a relationship that started beautifully. She was everything you ever wanted. Warm, supportive, understanding. You felt seen, appreciated, loved. Then, gradually or suddenly, things shift. She becomes critical of things she once praised. Your jokes aren't funny anymore. Your ambitions seem foolish to her. The sex becomes a weapon, given and withheld, based on your compliance with unspoken rules. You find yourself walking on eggshells, never knowing which version of her you'll encounter. The loving woman who adores you, or the cold stranger who looks at you with barely concealed contempt. You start changing yourself bit by bit, trying to win back the woman you first met. You abandon friendships she doesn't approve of. You give up hobbies that take time away from her. You find yourself constantly apologizing, constantly trying to prove your worth. When she turns cold without explanation, when she withdraws her warmth and watches you scramble to win it back, when she uses your own emotions as weapons against you, you're not dealing with her individual personality. You're confronting an autonomous complex of the collective feminine unconscious, and your anima, inflated and unconscious, completely paralyzes your ability to see clearly. The feminine shadow has many faces, and each one is designed by nature to test and ultimately destroy what is weak in the masculine. There's the face of the victim. She's always hurt, always wronged, always in need of rescue. But when you try to save her, you discover that she doesn't want to be saved. She wants to pull you into her victim narrative, to make you responsible for her pain while never allowing you to actually heal it. There's the face of the judge. Nothing you do is ever good enough. Your efforts are too little, too late. Your love is questioned, your commitment doubted. You could move mountains, and she would ask why you didn't move them sooner or place them somewhere else. This face of the shadow destroys through criticism what the masculine builds through effort. There's the face of the seductress. She wields sexuality like a master manipulator. She knows exactly how to inflame your desire and exactly when to withdraw, leaving you perpetually off balance, perpetually seeking what's just out of reach. She makes you feel like a king in bed and a beggar outside of it. You feel that crushing guilt without understanding its source. You submit emotionally, giving away pieces of yourself you can never reclaim. You try desperately to fix what cannot be fixed because it was never broken. It's simply the nature of the unconscious archetypal dance. And in the depths of your being, you live as a hostage to dynamics you don't even know exist. The most painful revelation: she's not doing this consciously. The feminine shadow possesses her just as your unconscious anima possesses you. When she tests you, manipulates you, withdraws from you, She's often as unconscious of the deeper motivations as you are. This isn't about blame or victimhood. This is about the tragic blindness that keeps both sexes trapped in patterns of mutual unconsciousness. You've probably experienced this. The woman who seemed to love you deeply suddenly treats you with inexplicable cruelty. The partner who was warm and affectionate becomes a stranger overnight. The person you trusted most uses your vulnerabilities against you in ways that seem impossibly calculated. And through it all, you torture yourself trying to understand what you did wrong, never realizing you're trying to solve the wrong puzzle entirely. The feminine shadow knows your weaknesses better than you know them yourself. If you fear abandonment, she'll threaten to leave. If you need validation, she'll withhold it. If you crave peace, she'll create chaos. If you seek fusion, she'll enforce distance. And she does this not from conscious cruelty, but from an unconscious imperative to test the truth of your masculinity. But here's what Jung understood that most men never grasp. This isn't a battle to be won. It's not about defeating the feminine shadow or learning to manipulate in return. It's about something far more difficult and far more rewarding: the journey to consciousness. Every projection you've placed on women, every fantasy of the perfect partner, every expectation of feminine behavior, all of these are breadcrumbs leading back to your own psyche. The women in your life, especially those who've hurt you most, have been mirrors showing you aspects of yourself you refuse to see. That woman who made you feel worthless, she was reflecting your own hidden feelings of worthlessness, the one who could never be satisfied. She was showing you your own insatiable inner hunger, the one who manipulated and controlled. She was revealing your own shadow tendencies to manipulate and control, tendencies you've pushed so far into unconsciousness that you can only see them when they're reflected back by another. This is the brutal medicine Jung prescribes. Instead of trying to understand women, you must first understand yourself. Instead of trying to see through feminine manipulation, you must first see through your own self-deceptions. Instead of seeking the perfect woman, you must first seek the imperfect truth of your own being. The teaching Jung offers is both brutal and liberating. As long as you haven't confronted your own anima, your own internal image of the feminine, you will be eternally blind to the real feminine outside yourself. This isn't about becoming cynical or closed off to women. This isn't about building walls or playing games. This is about the most difficult work a man can undertake, the journey into his own unconscious. You must learn to recognize your own projection patterns, to deconstruct your fantasies of salvation through woman, to face with psychological maturity that the external feminine didn't come to complete your soul. She came to mirror the wounds, the voids, and the shadows you refuse to face within yourself. The work begins with brutal honesty. You must look at every relationship you've had and ask yourself, what was I projecting? What did I see in her that was actually in me? What did I expect her to heal that I should have healed myself? What aspects of my own feminine nature have I rejected and therefore sought in her? These questions aren't comfortable. They require you to admit that much of what you called love was actually projection. Much of what you called connection was actually fusion. Much of what you called intimacy was actually an attempt to avoid the intimacy of knowing yourself. Only when you integrate your anima, not as an external lover, but as a bridge to your own wholeness, do you become capable of seeing woman as she really is, not a goddess, not a savior, not an enemy, but a human being, complex, ambiguous, real. This integration doesn't happen overnight. It's a process that requires patience, courage, and often professional guidance. You might need to explore therapy, particularly Jungian analysis. You might need to engage with your dreams, where your anima often appears. You might need to examine your relationship with your mother, the first carrier of your anima projection. But as you do this work, something miraculous happens. The projections begin to lift. You start to see women more clearly, not as angels or demons, but as complex beings struggling with their own unconscious forces. The manipulations that once destroyed you become transparent. Not because you've learned to manipulate in return, but because you can see the unconscious dynamics at play. You develop what Jung called psychological eyes, the ability to see beneath the surface of behavior to the archetypal forces moving both you and her. When she tests you, you recognize it as a test and respond from your center rather than your wounds. When she embodies the shadow, you hold space for it without being consumed. When she projects her animus onto you, you don't take it personally. This is the true work of masculine consciousness on the path of individuation. It requires courage most men will never find, the courage to look within, to face the feminine aspects of your own psyche, to withdraw the projections that have controlled your entire romantic life. Think about how this changes everything. Every relationship you've had, every heartbreak you've endured, every confusion you've felt, all of it takes on new meaning when you understand these dynamics. You're not just learning about psychology, you're discovering the hidden operating system of your own emotional life. The woman in your life right now or the one you'll meet tomorrow, you have a choice. You can continue to see her through the veil of your projections, remaining vulnerable to every unconscious pattern, every archetypal possession, every shadow manipulation. Or you can begin the work of consciousness, learning to see both her and yourself with clarity you've never imagined possible. This work isn't just about improving your relationships with women, it's about becoming whole. When you integrate your anima, you don't just become better at relationships, you become more creative, more intuitive, more connected to your own depths. You access parts of yourself that have been locked away since childhood. You become capable of a love that isn't based on projection, but on genuine recognition of another soul. How does this knowledge change your perspective on your past relationships? What patterns can you now recognize that were invisible before? What projections are you carrying right now that you're ready to examine? Share your revelations and personal experiences in the comments below. Your insight might be exactly what another man needs to hear to begin his own journey of awakening. If this video opened your eyes to dynamics you've never understood before, hit the like button to help other men find this crucial knowledge. Subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the deeper psychological truths that shape our lives. And don't miss our previous videos that lay the groundwork for understanding these profound concepts. Remember, the journey to psychological consciousness isn't easy, but it's the only path to authentic relationship, to genuine love, and to freedom from the unconscious patterns that have controlled you all your life. The question is, are you ready to see what you've been blind to all along? The choice is yours. You can close this video and return to the familiar darkness of projection and unconsciousness. Or you can take the first step on the most important journey of your life, the journey to see clearly, to love truly, and to finally become the man you were meant to be. What will you choose?